but it seems like it's capsulated when you're a performer. Everything is capsulated. So it's just like a strand of pearls. If you break one pearl off, all the other pearls fall off, and you start to go, oh my gosh, that was how long ago? I mean, even listening to you introduce me, it was like, oh no, it was in the 80s I did that? Yikes.
And I suppose, Tony, in terms of when we spoke in season one, we spoke to numerous actors and actresses, and they all had different sorts of stories to tell, some good, some bad. Normally, with the vibes we got was everyone had great things to say about Dwight Schultz. Everyone had good things to say about how jovial and friendly Mr. T was. People had good things to say about Dirk Benedict was a gentle sort of guy, sort of not really the guy he portrayed as character, but quite a shy, sort of timid guy that kept to himself. But an awful lot of mixed bag reports about George Peppard. Some people had good experiences with George. Some others had not so pleasant memories of George Peppard from their time on the A-Team. How did you feel? You appeared in 2 episodes of the A-Team, so you were on set for more than, I say, 6 weeks. How did you find your own personal memories? Did you have much interactions with George Peppard, or how did you find Hollywood movie star from Breakfast and Tiffany's, and how was he towards you and your time on the A-Team?
Oh, well, first of all, when you think of George Peppard, you're thinking of an icon, because Breakfast at Tiffany's, which is what George Peppard, I think it was one of his first big roles. You're talking about that's the time when my millennial of people were growing up, and how, none of us knew that Holly Golightly really was a prostitute, a call girl. Now a friend of mine, whom I adore very much, Carl Gottlieb, who wrote Jaws, The Jerk, Dr. Detroit, explained to me one day, he said, Toni, Holly Golightly, was a call girl. And I was like shocked. So for me, A-Team at that point was the beginning of me really starting to act a lot in television series. I had come from the world of doing live performance from American Conservatory Theater, and then I became a mime, Toad the Mime, who traveled all around the world. And then I brought myself to Hollywood in that era. So A-Team and that particular episode with George Peppard was really one of my very first moments on a show of that caliber. And it's interesting because I was totally frightened. I mean, George Peppard, I'm going to do a scene with George Peppard. I was very scared. And there was a girl, Susan Scannell, on the set. God bless her. I mean, when actors are generous like she was, and she was a very generous actress, no longer acting, but very generous. She watched my scene with George Peppard, and she could tell I was nervous. She could tell that I was being Toni Attell and not the character. So she said to me something very important that I try to embed in the minds of my actors that I teach at UCLA. She said, Toni, do an activity that will make him react to you. So I remember one moment of me just flicking his tie, like he had something on his tie, and then straightening it. And it so helped me get into the character. And I think George Peppard appreciated that, because then it gave him something to react to rather than just blah, 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 talking heads, as I call it.
Yeah.
So that was my first experience. And he was extremely kind to me.
Okay.
Very nice. I think at that time, when I went into the second part of it, the second season, as you said, I think George was having some problems mentally. I don't know, but my feeling was that he wasn't there altogether. I don't know, personally speaking, if it was early Alzheimer's or something, but he was very sweet, very kind to me. And then I saw him one night at dinner, and I went over and just chatted with him at dinner, but he just wasn't there. It's kind of an uncanny feeling, but something was vacant. And I don't think it was his fault. I think it was something was coming on to him that was preventing him from remembering it pretty much anything. Mr.
Okay.
T was a hoot. I must tell you a very funny story, though.
Okay,
Most of
please
the
do.
women that went on that show were very beautiful in the sense of shapely. It was almost like Baywatch. Well, I'm shapely in another way. I'm kind of like at that time I was more pear-shaped, kind of like with a little peanut on top of her head. I had a bigger bottom than I did at top. So the wardrobe lady kept saying to me, "Look, really, I want to give you a padded bra. Please, please let me give you a padded bra." And I was like, "No, come on, let me just. I am who I am. I was hired for who I am. I'm playing a character. I don't need a padded bra." She said, "Look, mum's the word. Nobody's going to know on the set. You're going to look beautiful. It's going to give you an hourglass figure, and nobody will know." So finally I went, "Well, okay." And she gave me this padded bra to wear. And as I walked on the set, Mr. T turned, and I guess this was a thing between Mr. T and the wardrobe mistress. And she took her hand and pointed it down at me and shook her head like, "Yeah, she's wearing a padded bra." And they all laughed. And I thought it was a pretty funny joke. I mean, I'd totally been set up. But they were all, you have to remember on sets like this, even on soaps, like The Young and the Restless and shows like that, people have been working together for a long time now. That was their second season, and they're pretty bored with each other by a certain amount of time. So any kind of joke or goof or fun or laughter brings them and the crew up. And it happens on a lot of shows. It just, the people want, perk us up, something new, funny, joke, anything.
And Tony, you teach an awful lot of your students acting today, and you mentioned in your past about your improv background and being able to improv at this drop of the hat. And obviously, for your students, you only have to show them clips of Dwight Schultz in terms of being one of the original masters of improv. And once he was signed on from the A team, he was probably the least known actor, but by God, by the end of it, he was world famous in terms of his abilities. But he brought something that none of the other actors could do. His ability to go off on a tangent, to go off on a loop, and just say go completely bonkers for a minute or two was pure genius, really, pure comedy gold that he was able to provide. So you must have loved your memories and interacting with Dwight, and I'm sure you two got on like a house on fire.
Not really. You would think so, because I had started the Comedy Store Players at the Comedy Store and had been working at that point in the 80s as a stand-up. Most of the team itself were very generous and very nice, but it was more of a formal niceness. You're talking about guys in the 80s, and guys in the 80s kept to guys in the 80s. They really didn't mess around or joke around with women in the 80s. I don't think Dwight knew that I did improv. And he was very lucky because Stephen Cannell, who produced all those shows, hired wonderful directors who allowed him, like Robin Williams. I worked a lot with Robin Williams, that allowed him to go off on his tangents, and they were brilliant. And if you feel safe on a set and safe with the director and safe with the producer, wow, somebody with an improv background like he had can do all that great stuff.
And Tony, did you feel that you mentioned there about being on a guy show? Did you get that sense that it was a real male testosterone driven sort of show from the moment you arrived there on the first day on set, that this was a guy thing?
Sure. It was a guy thing. I mean, it was all guys. I mean, think about it, the A team was all guys, and they bonded in an all guy way. And it's interesting because if you look at the history of improvisation, it was usually a lot of great guys. There weren't very many women allowed, just like in stand-up comedy. When I was doing comedy, I was working with people like Robin Williams, Jay Leno, David Letterman. Um, I was opening for Mort Saul and Jackie Mason and Robin Williams and Jay, and but it was a man's club.
Yeah.
Women weren't yet accepted. Of course, there was Joan Rivers out there and Elaine Boozler, but they were already out there.
Yeah.
The young ones those of us coming up. Robin and I, of course, were dear friends, and Jay and I became close. But most of it was the guys. It's the guys. So you just have to respect that. I mean, I think in improv, I got one line in one time with Robin. It just, and Robin was like him, like Dwight. You would let Robin go, and he would completely take over the stage. I mean, you could just stand there and be a tree, or a pyramid. He just would go.
And Toni, I suppose as an actress and being on the set of the A Team and appearing in the 2 episodes, you would have seen the Stephen Cannell production at hand, working at hand. But you would have also probably seen, even though you probably weren't in it yourself, you would have probably seen the amazing stunt team at work. I imagine you might have seen some of the stunts that were shot when you weren't filming. Did you happen to see some of the stunts that took place in the A Team, the stunt team at work? And if so, were you taken back by how ahead of the time they were?
Well, Stephen Cannell himself was ahead of his time. I mean, he really, I have a story about Stephen that I truly respected him. His casting director, he had several casting directors in his production team. He had Simon Ayres, whose father had been Lou Ayres, had been a famous actor. He had Victoria Burrows, who discovered Johnny Depp and put him in the original teenage show where he's a spy.
Yeah.
I'm blanking on the show's name right now, but she and Simon were very influential in bringing in some unknown stars, some unknown people who became stars. And one day Victoria called me up, and goes back to your Stephen Cannell story. And she said, this was around 6 o'clock at night. She said, I want you to come in right now for a role. I said, oh. She said, it has one line. And as an actor, and in that time, you worked your way up.
Yeah.
I had gone long past, I thought, the one-liners, and now we had worked into the higher range of guest stars. And I said, well, Victoria, I don't really want to do one line. She said, meet me at Stephen Cannell's office. And I thought, oh, how interesting. I'm going to get to meet Stephen Cannell because he hired me on a lot of his shows. And this show was Hardball. I don't know if you remember Hardball, but so I walked into Stephen Cannell's office, and it wasn't one line. They were testing me. They were testing me to see, I think, my ego. It was actually a full 2 weeks of work on the set. And he himself was so professional and so nice, knew everything about me, said, I know you can do this. Thank you for coming in this late at night. And and of course I got the role, but he was I think I walked into his office at almost 8:30 at night, and he was still writing and working on not only A Team, Hardball, but all the other 5 or 6 shows that he produced. Hard worker. And as for watching the other scenes, I mean, I think all actors should always watch other actors work. So when I had the chance, when I wasn't on set, I'd go and sit and watch how they worked because they were all good. Mr., all of them were good. Even Mr. T, who a lot of people teased, because of his character, and you know, he played the same thing, but it was good. I mean, he was very committed to what he did, and I have nothing bad to say about it. They ran it just very smoothly. A lot of guest directors. It was a very smooth running machinery.
Yeah. And Tony, this brings me on to an interesting question now, probably the penultimate sort of question. It's very good because we've actually an actress here who actually teaches young potential actors here in UCLA. So you might be able to give us a professional answer to this sort of question. Take all those cult classic TV series like Starsky and Hutch, Dukes of Hazzard, the A-Team. 20 years on, Hollywood producing companies, directors, they said, okay, wow, let's do a movie about Starsky and Hutch. Let's do a movie about Dukes of Hazzard. Let's do a movie about the A-Team. And they all have failed, and dare I say, failed miserably, because they've tried to take something from 20 years ago and put it into the modern sort of world and put a modern twist into it. And they've taken away from its originality and what made it so good. Why do you think they've got it so wrong in terms of some of these big time 80s classics, in terms of trying to redo them over, and really that they have failed so miserably? Is it, if it's golden and it's the classic, is the golden rule that you don't touch it, you leave it alone?
Well, I think that's a really smart question, and I'm kind of on the side of, if it worked, let it be. You know, I think it's because they keep rehashing and going. We're a snake biting our own tail. We keep going back, and if you think about it, how many times have they done Great Expectations or some of Dickens' great work? I mean, you want to cry because the original was so brilliant. You know,
my example on that, Tony, sorry for coming in, is they did 3 Die Hard movies with Bruce Willis back in the early 80s and 90s. They left it 12 years and then they did another one, Die Hard 4, and it just almost felt like Bruce was in a different part of his life now to go back and do that again. It just didn't resonate at all in terms of that. Is that sometimes that when time has passed, the time scope for that project has passed, has it really?
absolutely. And you know, with Bruce Willis, of course, everybody knows that he now has a problem going on, but he was a wonderful natural actor. I actually read with him in the sense for actresses for a movie that he was doing, and it was intriguing to me. He was so warm and so considerate, had a tremendous sense of humor. Now remember, he was started out as a bartender. So bartenders, you know, listen to a lot of stories and are really good listeners, and he was. And people don't realize that in acting, it's not you just saying blah, 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 blah. It's you really listening and responding to the other person. And I love the Die Hard movies, and I loved Bruce Willis. He's one of my favorite because he just is so natural, and there's a sparkle in his eyes. But I don't, you know, everything. Now my phone's ringing. I'm so sorry.
No
My dogs
problem.
were barking. No, my phone rings. My dogs were barking. It was like,
Perfect. It's
God
perfect.
forbid
It's
I have
human
any
life.
dignity in my life. There's
It's
no
human
dignity.
life, Tony.
Yeah, but I really don't like them redoing movies and or TV shows. I haven't seen one that I've truly enjoyed, and I'm trying to think. Sometimes they do them as a series. Now they're doing a series right now on, I think, Great Expectations. It was very good, and they did it like a series, like a TV show. But it was beautifully shot and beautifully done in England. Sometimes I think those work, but in America, when we just redo it as a movie, I haven't. Have you seen any that worked?
No, not that I can recall anyway, off the top of my head anyway. So that's what brought up the question. And Toni Attell, now for the final question to you. Is there anything you would like to say to your Irish fans that would have followed you throughout your career and some of the movies that you have been in?
Well, James, first of all, my last name is Attell, so I just want to make sure they know
Toni
it's
Attell.
Yeah.
Okay.
But Atwell I'll take, but it's
Okay.
it's Toni Attell. I think the thing that I would want to say to anybody who's listening to you that's a young actor right now or a young performer is that go for your dreams, and the best way to go for your dreams is like anything. Make yourself your axe, your instrument. You are branding yourself. So brand yourself and then go on to learn everything you need to learn about this industry and then start auditioning. Don't just audition because it makes people nervous if you don't know what you're doing. People can sense it. They can smell the need. They can smell people who don't know what they're doing. So go for your dream, but learn first. Learn what style of acting. Is it Meisner? Is it the method? Is it Uta Hagen? Is it William Ball? Whatever it is, Strasberg, whatever, go for it. Learn it. And then once you get all that inside your spine, go for your dream. It's never too late.
On that note, Toni Attell, thanks for Toni Attell. Thanks for sharing your memories with us today for your time on the A-Team. 2 episodes, Uncle Buckle Up, December the 17th, 1985, season 4, episode 12. You played the character Jackie. And then in season 5, episode 6 of the Say Uncle Affair, which aired on October 31st, 1986, you played the character Nurse Reynolds. But from the moment from me, Jim Conlan, to you, Toni Attell, stay safe, take care, and God bless, madam.
God bless you too, James.
Thank you. Take care, Toni.
Bye-bye.